Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to this webinar that we are doing with Energize Denver and CPACE to talk about financing for manufacturing and industrial buildings. Here's our short agenda today. Just a few notes. This meeting is being recorded. I will share the slides with everybody who has just registered for this meeting. And if you have questions, please use the Q&A box feature. I'll start with a very brief overview about programming for MAI buildings this year, and then I will pass it over to Tracy Phillips to talk about CPACE. And for those of you whom I haven't met, my name is Daniel Rayner. I work for the City and County of Denver in our Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, or CASR for short, and I'm our industrial administrator. So I just wanted to talk very briefly about some upcoming deadlines this year. So first, as everybody should be aware, starting last year, MAI buildings are required to start benchmarking their annual energy usage through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Commercial multifamily buildings have been benchmarking since about 2016. This year, the benchmarking deadline is June 1st. For most MAI buildings, you're benchmarking just like every other commercial building, but you might be reporting a few extra metrics. For example, if you are wishing to pursue a custom performance metric, you may want to benchmark your production data, for example. So talk to me if that's the case. And then just a note, third-party data verification is required in performance years. So a lot of you may have seen this slide before, but I just want to highlight that December 1st is the deadline for choosing your pathway and metric for compliance purposes. Building MAI buildings that don't apply by December 1st will be assigned to that default pathway, a 30% EUI reduction from their baseline year. So now is the time to start planning. Regardless of which compliance path you choose, you may be performing some energy efficiency upgrades in your building. So if you want some special financing to perform these building upgrades, CPACE may be appropriate for you. CPACE can help you finance energy efficiency projects in your building in order to reduce your energy bills and help you achieve the performance requirements under this program. And with that, I will turn it over to Tracy Phillips.
All right, thanks. Welcome everybody. My name is Tracy Phillips. I'm the director of the Colorado Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. For those of you that are not familiar with the program, I'll be telling you all about how the program and the financing works, and hopefully how the program can potentially help some of you with your projects to meet those requirements that Daniel was just talking about. So Daniel, next slide. So to give you all some background on the Colorado Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, or CPACE program, the program was launched in 2016, and it's a statewide financing program for existing buildings. It's designed to help finance energy efficiency, renewable energy, water conservation, and we recently added resiliency projects. It can also be used to help finance energy efficient new construction projects as well. So the program covers the entire state of Colorado, but each county has to voluntarily opt in to the program before we can begin financing projects in that county. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. The program and all of the projects are financed via private capital. So there's no outside money, no state money or federal money, no grants or bonds supporting the program. It's completely self-sustaining. The program is overseen by something called the New Energy Improvement District, or NEID for short. There's a board of volunteers appointed by the governor that oversee the program at a high level. And the program sponsoring agency is the Colorado Energy Office. So they help keep this program alive and doing the work we're trying to do. Next slide. So let me tell you about what CPACE is, what this financing is. So it was designed to be different than traditional forms of financing. And there's really three main things that make CPACE financing different than other traditional financing options. The first is it's 100% financing. So CPACE can cover all of the hard costs, all of the soft costs, everything related to the improvements you're looking to do on a building you can finance through CPACE. There's no out of pocket. The second is it's long-term financing. So you can do a finance term up to 25 years. So you think of a traditional bank loan, you usually have to come out of pocket, say 20%, so put money down, and you're limited to a finance term of 5 or 7 or maybe up to 10 years. So CPACE is very different in that it can be used long term, and there's nothing that you need to put down at closing. And the third thing that makes CPACE really unique is it's a special assessment that's placed on the property. So if you can go to the next slide, Daniel. So as a special assessment, for those of you that aren't familiar with special assessments, buildings have assessments placed on them all of the time to help finance public good projects. So things like a sewer assessment or a sidewalk assessment. So you think of a neighborhood and they want to improve all the sidewalks in the neighborhood. The county will place a sidewalk assessment on all the buildings in that neighborhood. And that's how the owners help pay for the new sidewalks. So it's a mechanism that's been around for a very long time. So CPACE uses the same financing mechanism, except that this is a special assessment being placed just on the building that wants to use CPACE financing. So it's voluntary. As an assessment on the property, the owner makes their CPACE payments through their property tax bill. So whenever you pay property taxes once a year for most building owners or twice a year, that's when you make your CPACE payment. The idea behind doing it that way is as an assessment on the property, it's attached to the building and not the building owner. So it rides with the land, if you will. So if you go to sell your building down the road, you don't have to continue to make the CPACE payments. You're only making the CPACE payments while you own the building and enjoying the energy savings, of course, during that time. And then when you sell the building, if you do, you have the ability to hand off the CPACE repayment obligation to the next owner. The other thing I'll mention here is a lot of projects are designed so that the energy savings outweigh the annual CPACE payments, right? And for some projects, that's very important, but it's not a requirement, meaning you can do improvements that save energy, but don't necessarily pay for that improvement anytime soon. Like a roof replacement is a great example of that type of project where you're getting some energy savings from the new roof, but for those savings to pay for the roof, it's going to take you 200 years or more, right? So you're not necessarily doing it as an energy saving improvement. It's something that the building needs, though, a new roof, right? So you can use CPACE in that way. Next slide. So the C in CPACE stands for commercial. So any commercial, industrial, agricultural, manufacturing building is eligible for financing. And I know this group is specifically interested in industrial manufacturing and agricultural. So I highlighted those here. But it's essentially anything that's not residential, you can use CPACE financing for. In terms of improvements, anything that reduces your utility bill you can finance through CPACE. So common improvements would be a lighting retrofit, HVAC upgrades, or new controls. It could be anything to do with the envelope. So I mentioned roof replacement. It could be new windows. It could be better insulation. Water, of course, is a utility. So low flow plumbing fixtures or anything that reduces the water use in the building is eligible. I know with industrial facilities and manufacturing, there's all sorts of process equipment, right? As long as it's more efficient than the process equipment that was there before, those types of improvements are eligible. Any type of renewable energy, so solar PV systems are very popular, but it could be any kind of renewable energy improvement. Resiliency is the new one on the list. This was just approved about a year ago. This has to do with improvements that don't necessarily save energy. They usually don't. So they don't reduce your utility bill, but they improve the building's resiliency. So it's not necessarily in the theme Daniel was talking about of, a better EUI for your building. But if you're improving your building's EUI and you have any of these other kinds of resiliency improvements like fire protection, flood protection, improving the indoor air quality, backup power generation, any of those improvements you can also finance along with these other improvements. Next slide, Daniel. And anything related to the improvements can also be financed through CPACE. So any of the soft costs related to the project, like if you need to do an energy audit to figure out what improvements you want to do to the building, the costs of that energy audit are eligible for financing through CPACE. Or any other soft costs, if you have to do any kind of engineering design work or architectural fees, all of those can be rolled in to the financing, as well as any related hard costs. So let's say you're upgrading the lighting in your building and you need to do an electrical upgrade. Those electrical upgrades are considered related to the lighting and eligible for financing. Or if you have to put a new boiler in the building and you have to do asbestos abatement associated with that new boiler, the asbestos abatement costs are considered related and eligible for financing. So it's truly meant to be 100% financing. Next slide. So a few other things I'll mention about the financing. So the program does allow for retroactive financing, meaning if a project was done within the last 3 years from the time you submit an application to the program, it's still eligible for CPACE financing. So any kind of new construction or gut rehabilitation project, we look at when was the certificate of occupancy issued, and as long as you're applying for financing within 3 years of that certificate of occupancy, that project's still eligible for financing. We've had a lot of new construction projects utilize this that need to help stabilize their financial situation or ran into construction overrun costs, that kind of thing. For existing buildings, the way it applies, if you did a project within the last 3 years, you can include it, but you have to do new things, right, to the building. And those past costs can't represent more than 35% of the total finance amount that you're looking to do. So as an example, let's say you did a roof replacement a couple of years ago and it cost $200,000. And now you're looking to do other improvements as well that cost, let's say, $500,000, right? So the total is $700,000. So that $200,000 that you did in the past is less than 35% of the $700,000 you're looking to finance. So you can include all of those past roof replacement costs in your financing. You can also refinance. So I know interest rates are pretty high these days, and so that gives some people pause. But you can refinance if interest rates come down. So, and you can refinance with the same CPACE capital provider that you used or a different one down the road. Okay, next slide, Daniel. So I mentioned a couple of other things that we added to the program recently. This is a little more in the weeds, but for new construction projects, you can do an interest-only period up to 3 years. So this can help a new construction financing stabilize, gives it that time to endure the construction costs and get the building up and running. And so that interest-only period can help accommodate that. We also just last week introduced variable interest rates. So again, in a response to the higher interest rates that we're seeing these days, projects can utilize a variable interest rate. So historically, it's always been a fixed interest rate throughout the finance term, up to 25 years. Now, if it looks like it could be valuable to a project, they can use a variable interest rate. Next slide. I also wanted to mention how CPACE is being used to sort of tackle what we call the split incentive. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, but a lot of buildings will have tenants, and the tenants have a triple net lease, right? So they're paying their portion of the utilities and the other expenses like property taxes and those types of things. And so it's always been a challenge for building owners that have these types of triple net leases, because if they invest in capital improvements, right, they put up all the money for the new equipment, the new building upgrades, but then the tenants get the majority of the utility cost savings, right? And so an owner doesn't have a lot of interest necessarily in doing these capital improvements because they're not getting the utility cost savings. So the nice thing about CPACE, because you're making your payments through your property tax bill, this gives owners the ability to pass on that repayment obligation to their tenants, right? They're already paying their portion of the property taxes. And so they'll pay their portion of the CPACE assessment as well. So they're getting the utility cost savings, which offset that CPACE payment that they're helping to contribute to. So this can be a great mechanism for building owners to tackle this triple net lease split incentive challenge that a lot of them see. Next slide. So I wanted to step back a second and just talk about CPACE nationwide. So we didn't create CPACE financing in Colorado. It actually started about 13 years ago. There are now 31 states with active CPACE programs. If you're interested, if you do operate in a state other than Colorado and you're interested in CPACE financing, in the bottom left of my slide there, you can see there's an organization, Pace Nation. And if you go to pacenation.org, that's their website, you see a list of every single PACE program in the country. So that's a resource that you can take a look at. Pacenation.org also has a great repository of information about PACE financing in general. So our website, the Colorado website, has a lot of information, but you can also, if you really want to dig in, you can go there as well. They have market data and case studies and white papers, all sorts of resources that you can also explore. Next slide. So specific to Colorado, I mentioned we're a statewide program, but each county has to participate before we can start financing projects in that county. So we actually have 40 counties currently participating in the program. This represents about 96% of the state's commercial building stock is in a participating county. So it's more likely than not that if you have a building interested, that they're already in a participating county, which is great. If you do have a building that's in a county that's not yet participating, the best thing to do is to reach out to me, and that'll give me ammunition. I need to go to the county commissioners and talk to them about participation. It usually helps if I have a building owner that's interested or a developer that's interested, in order to get the county commissioners to pay attention to me. So just let me know if you do have a project outside of a participating county, and we can work to get them on board. Next slide. So I'd like to talk about this report. This is a report done by Rocky Mountain Institute that evaluated sort of these types of energy efficiency projects for existing buildings. And what I liked about it, so it showed that when you do capital improvements, which is what CPACE is all about, on average, a building will save about 35% or more on their utility costs. So that's great, but what it translates into are metrics that a building owner can really appreciate, which is when you do these types of projects, the net operating income for a building will typically go up between 2.4 and 5.6%. So building owners tend to like that a lot. It also will increase the property value of the building on average between $5 and $11 a square foot. So these are two important metrics that we make sure to point out. We will quantify them when we're working with a building owner, so they can see not only here are the energy savings, utility cost savings I'm getting, but this is how they translate into an improved net operating income and into improved building asset value. Next slide. So I wanted to talk about mortgage holder consent. Because CPACE is an assessment, that's placed on the property as an assessment, it takes priority ahead of the mortgage. Any assessment does, right? So as part of our process, if there is a mortgage in place, or in the case of new construction, a construction lender, and there very often is, we need to get consent from that mortgage holder or that construction lender before we can finance the project and have the assessment placed on the property. And so this is usually something that we handle. So it's not something you necessarily need to worry about as a building owner or contractor. Um, but you might ask yourself, well, why would a mortgage holder provide consent, right? The same benefits that go to a building owner are the same that a mortgage holder appreciates as well, meaning that, as I mentioned, as a result of this project, the net operating income is going to go up. And so mortgage holders like that a lot. I also mentioned that the value of the property is going to go up as a result of these projects. Again, that's the mortgage holder's collateral, right? And so they like that as well. So these are some great positives. Mortgage holders are bankers, right? And they're risk analysts at the end of the day. So they always want to consider, well, what happens in a default scenario? So without going too much into the weeds, the key thought here is that CPACE does not accelerate in a default scenario, meaning it doesn't come due. So it's only in a default scenario, it's only any payments and arrears that need to be paid in that scenario. And those payments, those annual payments, typically are less than 0.4% of a building's value. So in other words, it's incredibly low risk to a mortgage holder, this type of financing. And so you can go to the next slide, Daniel. Because of that, 44 different mortgage holders, different banks in Colorado have provided consent in the past, many of them multiple times. So the banking community in general now is much more comfortable. They understand what CPACE is. So usually when it's any of these banks that I'm dealing with, it's great because they've already dealt with CPACE before. They understand it. If it's a bank we haven't dealt with before, I need to explain, just like I've done to all these 44 banks in the past, and get them comfortable with it. But this is just one component that we do need to evaluate when we're doing a project. Next slide. So in terms of the actual financing for these projects, as I mentioned, it's all private capital. These are banks and credit unions and other financial organizations that participate in the program and finance these projects. And when they look at a CPACE project, they'll each underwrite the financing according to their own underwriting process. But there's some main metrics that they look at when they're evaluating a project. And so these are important, and we look at these very early on in a project's development. So the first one is, what's the loan to value, right? What's the existing mortgage on the property and the value of the property? Excuse me. And they usually want to see an 80% or less loan to value. So in other words, if I have a building worth $1 million and I have a $600,000 mortgage on that building outstanding, that's a 60% loan to value. So that's a good candidate for CPACE. So you just don't want a building that has too much debt on it. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. And so, like I said, we look at that early on and make sure we set expectations appropriately. Then how much financing can they get? You may have a long list of improvements you want to do, but a CPACE lender will typically provide up to 30% of the building's value in terms of CPACE financing. So again, if I had a building worth $1 million, you're looking at about $300,000 worth of CPACE financing that you can get. So if you want to do more than that, in terms of improvements, you'd have to come out of pocket or figure out some other way of doing whatever is in excess of the 300 grand. So again, we look at these very early on so we can set expectations with the building owner. Next slide. And here's our community of 51 lenders that we have participating in the program in Colorado. So as I mentioned, these are different community banks, credit unions, and other financial organizations. The nice thing about having such a large group of lenders is it enables the program to finance all different types of projects, all different size projects and locations within the state. Many of these are local and are in more rural communities. I know in the early days, I had a real hard time getting financing for more rural projects, but we've been able to enlist this group of lenders that are located in Lamar, Colorado. I know probably know the building that's looking to use the financing. So this gives us some great reach and makes the financing more accessible to all the folks in Colorado. Next slide. So let me step you through the financing process. If you have a building and you're interested in using CPACE financing, the first step is to send us what we call a pre-qualification submission form. So you can download this off of our website or just shoot me an email and I'll send it out to you. It's a 4-page application. It's pretty straightforward. You send that into us. When we receive that, we'll pre-screen the building to make sure it's eligible. And then I'll usually reach out, especially if it's someone new to CPACE, in step 2 to set up a kickoff call. This is a 30-minute call where we will review the project and talk about it. I'll talk about the CPACE financing process, answer any questions. We just get everything started and make sure everybody's on the right track. Then in step 3, you develop your project. And some projects may come to us and they already know what they want to do. Some of them are then going to start figuring it out. But the bottom line is that's business as usual, right? You can work with any contractors that you want, figure out the scope of work that you're looking to do. Once you've decided on the scope of work and how much it's going to cost, that information gets sent to the program. We'll evaluate it, make sure everything's eligible, look over the savings estimates, and then we'll develop a financial report. We call it an EPIC report that we send to the building owner to review. We'll review it with them and make sure the financial projections look good to them. What is the project going to look like when I finance it through CPACE? What are the cash flows, all the rest of it? If that all looks great to the owner in step 4, then we move on to that mortgage holder consent piece that I mentioned. So that's when I'll reach out to the bank and say, yep, this owner is looking to borrow $250,000 in CPACE. Are you happy with that? And they say, of course, yes, this looks great. I'm so happy to help this owner. I'm glad they're getting a better building out of all this. Their NOI is going up, value of property is going up. I'd love to sign the mortgage holder consent. Then in step 6, we set up the building owner with a CPACE lender. So out of that 51 lenders, this can work one of 2 ways. Either an owner can say, oh, I know that bank and I love them and I want to work with them. And so then we'll work with that lender and get the CPACE financing closed. Or we can go out to all 51 lenders and say, hey, we have this building owner that would like to do this $250,000 project. Are you interested? And if the lender's interested, they'll send in a term sheet with their terms. So it's a competitive market, which helps keeps interest rates down and closing costs down as much as possible. And then the owner will select which lender they want to work with that way. Once the lender is selected, they'll do their underwriting, as I mentioned, and then the financing agreement will get executed in step 7, and we'll close the project. So that's how it works. Next slide. So I mentioned the EPIC report, and there's this tool that we have available to everybody. And if you're interested in learning more about this tool specifically, you can reach out to me and I can set up a demo with you. EPIC stands for Energy Performance Improvement Calculator. So this is a tool that we created to help originate projects. As the name would suggest, it's a calculator. So it helps you estimate what the energy and cost savings are going to be for common improvements with existing buildings. It also estimates how much those improvements typically cost. So if you're thinking about doing, an HVAC retrofit, it'll tell you, oh, well, it's probably going to cost you about 150 grand, and here's how much you're typically going to save. It also has a financial impact component. So it'll show you, if you're looking to use different forms of financing, what the project can look like. So if you're thinking about a bank loan or a CPACE loan, it'll show you what the payments are most likely going to be. So this has been a great tool used by a lot of folks and to help sort of figure out early on what the project's going to look like. Next slide. And if you're a contractor, it really helps you engage with an owner, right? To help make the business case, to show them that, oh, yeah, here's what the savings are going to be, here's what the costs are going to be, and here's different ways you can finance the project. So it really helps you get an idea of whether or not whether CPACE is a good fit, or what improvements are going to get you to where you want to go. The other thing I'll mention too is Daniel was talking about with the standards and Energize Denver and the EUI. This report will show you what your EUI will be after you do certain improvements. So it can give you an idea of, yeah, will these improvements get me where I need to be, or do I need to do more, right, in order to get there? So it's a pretty powerful tool in that respect. Next slide. It also, we recently added solar PV to the list of improvements that you can analyze. It uses, for those of you familiar with solar analysis, solar PV systems, it uses PV watts, which is pretty popular among solar contractors. But one of the really impressive things that Epic does, the Epic tool does, is it considers any improvements that were done before and how they're going to impact the load on the building, right? So you're not sizing your solar PV system to what the load was before you did the improvements. It looks at what the loads are going to be after, right? If you're doing a lighting retrofit, the building's not going to use as much electricity as it did before. So you can downsize the solar PV system and still satisfy, 100% of the load in the building. The other thing that the Epic tool does, if you look in the middle on the right of my graphic there, it evaluates system conversion, meaning if you're looking to electrify your building, right, get off of fossil fuels, the Epic tool can evaluate what financial impact, energy impact that kind of new system is going to have. If you went to an all heat pump system or a variable refrigerant flow system, Epic, rather than doing an energy model that may take you weeks to develop, you can use the Epic tool in a matter of minutes and figure out what kind of impact that kind of electrification system is going to have on your building. Next slide. So I wanted to, over the next few minutes, just show you some case studies and show you what the program's done to date. So in Colorado, we financed 127 projects and a little over 261 million in financing. So we've done a lot of projects now, been around for a little over 8 years now. Project sizes range pretty dramatically. The smallest projects that we've done are right around the low $50,000 range. In terms of largest, the biggest one we've done in Colorado is 55.5 million in CPACE financing. So the sky's the limit. You cannot have a project too big for CPACE. On the smaller side, because CPACE is long-term financing, it doesn't pencil out as well once you get below $50,000. So you can do a project less than 50 grand. There's no problem doing that. But it just doesn't pencil out great. It's like, would you finance your car over 20, 25 years? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So but anyway, that's sort of the range. It's pretty broad. Okay, next slide. I've talked about most of this other stuff. So let me show you some case studies. My intent here is to try to give you some ideas of the types of projects that are being done, focusing on manufacturing and industrial for the most part. So this was a building. I like this slide because it tells a couple of stories. So there were 7 tenants in this building. So this was an example of, sort of a split incentive type of scenario where the owner was able to split up the CPACE assessment among the tenants to have them help pay for the CPACE, their portion of the CPACE assessment. So they like that a lot. And this project used a little over $330,000 in CPACE financing to put on a 100 kilowatt solar PV system on the roof and do a lighting retrofit throughout the building. They also were replacing the roof, and they thought about rolling that into the CPACE financing as well, but they decided to finance that outside of CPACE. So you can, of course, do that. You don't have to finance everything. You can just finance the things that you want to through CPACE. The other thing I'll mention about this one is one of the tenants was a cannabis grow facility. So anything to do with cannabis, CPACE cannot help finance that tenant or that project. So in this case, we sort of carved out the cannabis grower out of the scope of CPACE financing. So there are ways we can work around that. But I did want to mention, I know many of the folks on the call may have something to do or buildings that have to do with cannabis. And unfortunately, for a number of reasons, we can't finance projects with a business related to cannabis. Next slide. So here's some other examples. This was a 51,000 square foot manufacturing facility. They used $340,000 in CPACE financing to put a new 47 kilowatt solar PV system on the roof. That solar is very popular with manufacturing and industrial facilities because they have such a load in their building. So it works really great for them. They also replaced all the rooftop units, put on a new rooftop unit controls, and they replaced their roof. So that was a really terrific project. Next one. Here's a case where this was the Handicaps Inc. building. They manufacture mobility driving equipment. So they take, cars and retrofit them for folks, to help them drive if they have physical challenges. And they desperately needed a new roof. They were hit pretty hard by COVID and couldn't really sustain the costs associated with a new roof. So CPACE was a great fit for them. They used $450,000 in CPACE financing to get their roof replaced. So in terms of energy savings, there weren't a lot necessarily, but it really helped them address a significant need that they had in the building. Next slide. Here's another example of a 75,000 square foot manufacturing facility. They used $225,000 in CPACE financing to upgrade all of their doors, put in all new LED lighting. And as I mentioned, you can include anything related to the improvements. So they had to do electrical upgrades to support the new lighting system. So those costs were rolled into the financing as well. Next slide. We've also seen a lot of gut rehabilitation projects. So this is an example. This was a big box retail that sat dormant for years, and they used CPACE to help completely refurbish the property. So they used just under 1.7 million in CPACE financing to replace all the windows, put in new skylights, all new heating and cooling equipment, destratification fans, and a new LED lighting system. So we're seeing a lot of that. Next slide. Here's just some other examples of other industrial and manufacturing facilities that CPACE has helped finance. So you can see a lot of them involve solar, a lot of them involve roof replacements, because like I said, that's something no owner ever wants to pay for, right, is a new roof. And it's a great way to finance it if you can stretch it out over 25 years, the payments, and you don't have to keep paying for the new roof when you sell the building, right? The next owner will make those payments. So here's just some examples. There's also, I put one new construction example. This was a greenhouse. They grow lettuce, and they used a little over 3.5 million to help build that new greenhouse facility. Next slide. So I mentioned to get things started, all you need to do is send us a pre-qualification submission form. If you look at the bottom right of my slide, copace.com, that's the program's website. And then if you go to the resources link, you'll find this form, or you can just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. All you have to provide is general information about the building. If you know what kind of project you're looking to do, that's great, but you can be very vague. You can send this to us early on. So if you just say, oh, we're thinking about doing HVAC upgrades and a new roof and maybe solar, dollar amount to be determined, that's fine. But this will get the financing process started with us so we can start working with you on your project. Next slide. And so there's my contact information. If you have a project that you think it might be a good candidate, you can reach out to me and we can talk more about it. I'm also a resource if you're a contractor and you're working with a building owner, I'm always happy to go and talk to a building owner about CPACE and explain to them how it works and answer their questions. So you can just let me know. All right, that's it, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Um, Thank you everybody for joining. If you have any questions for Tracy or myself, please add them to the Q&A box. I see one in here now. What's the process for notification of the pathway we choose? So you will apply to the MAI alternate compliance option by December 1st. And you can find the link to that on this MAI webpage here. I don't see any other questions. I know Tracy's presentation is super thorough, so I probably preemptively answered everything. Um, but I'll give it another 30 seconds and see if anybody has anything. Okay. Tracy, this is a question for you. We're a nonprofit that occupies and operates both capital and operational expenses, a city-owned building. Are we eligible?
Yeah, you are. Nonprofits, first of all, nonprofits can have assessments placed on them just like everybody else. So I know that question always comes up. Well, we don't pay property taxes. How does this work for us? That doesn't matter. You can still have a building can still have an assessment, like a CPA special assessment placed on them. So we work with nonprofits all the time. We've done senior centers, faith-based organizations, YMCA's. So nonprofits are not a problem. Public buildings as well. There's no problem there either. So we actually in Colorado we haven't done any public buildings, but they are eligible. Usually, public buildings can get money via a bond or something like that. That's less expensive than CPACE. So that's why a lot of public buildings don't necessarily utilize CPACE financing, but they can. And I've talked to a lot of school districts and other municipalities, other public buildings about potentially using CPACE. So yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't use CPACE.
Great. What is an example, if you can share, Tracy, of a recent percentage rate for financing?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, interest rates are 24 historic highs. So what I've been seeing typically, and it is a competitive market, so interest rates will vary. They've been in the low 8% range recently. So that's usually what I tell people what to expect is somewhere between, say, 7.75 and 8.5% interest rate for most projects right now.
Great. Related to roof replacements, could you finance a major roof repair or resurfacing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, as long as the overarching metric is will that improvement reduce the building's utility costs? So if you're doing some kind of overlay or some other repairs to the roof, as long as you're increasing the level of insulation or putting some kind of reflective coating, something like that, so you're reducing the load in the building, and then you're getting heating and cooling savings from that roof improvement, then it's eligible. So, and it doesn't matter how much savings you're going to realize, as long as there's some amount of reduction in the load in the building or the utility costs of the building, then it's eligible. So, yeah, we've done a lot of, roof coatings or roof repair types of projects.
Great. You may understand this question. Will 30% of the property value disqualify you? Is it still worth attempting? For example, a $55 million project property value.
Um,
I'm not sure if I quite understand that question. I
yeah, I mean, it's not I'll answer it like this. So yeah, it's not that it disqualifies you or qualifies you. Yeah, a lender will typically be willing to lend up to 30% of a property's value, right? So in some circumstances, that may not get you all the money you need to do all the improvements you want to do. So you might have to either dial back the number of projects you're looking to do or find other ways. We'll have projects that'll have multiple sources of financing, right? They may use CPACE for some of it. Some of them have applied for a grant to cover some of the costs. We've had like faith-based organizations or YMCAs do fundraisers to cover some of the costs of a project. So that 30% isn't a rule, it's just a guideline. Some lenders will go higher than that. But that's usually what you can expect is about 30% of the building's value maximum from CPACE.
Great.
So hopefully that answered it.
Uh, do you lend on smaller buildings, such as a 13,000 square foot building? Are there any size restrictions?
There's no size restrictions. We've actually, the smallest building we've done was a 1,000 square foot building. That's pretty darn small. So yeah, size, there's no problem with size. Like I was just saying earlier, it's more about the value of the property that really plays in. So if you have that 13,000 square foot building, I don't even care what the square footage is really. I'm going to look at what's the value of that building. If that building's worth 300,000, then okay, that building can get about $100,000 in financing, right? It's more the value of the property that matters, not the size.
Great. That was the last question that I see. So we might be able to go ahead and wrap up then. I'll send out these slides. This recording will go in our webinar library on our website. So you'll have access to this information and to Tracy and my contact information should you want to reach out. Thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you for everybody for joining today.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody. I hope to hear from you.
Great. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, bye.